I used to be, a pacifist. I used to believe in nonviolence until I understood that nonviolence is a privilege. Because when the violence is being enacted on you, you don't have the privilege to be nonviolent. Marginalized people who are having violence enacted on them by the oppressive state, whether it's physical aggression, whether it's the violence of cutting social programs, whether it's the violence of redlining, whether it's the violence of throwing people's resumes away because their names sound too black and so people can't get jobs and they can't work and they can't feed their families, whether it's that violence or direct aggression, Black and brown marginalized people, other marginalized people as well, don't have the benefit, they don't have the privilege of being nonviolent. And there was a quote that woke me up to this. Here's the quote. This is from Peter Gelderloos. Quote, "Nonviolence is an inherently privileged position in the modern context. Besides the fact that the typical pacifist is quite clearly white and middle class, pacifism is an ideology that comes from a privileged context. It ignores that violence is already here, that violence is unavoidable, structurally integral part of that violence is an unavoidable, structurally integral part of the current social hierarchy, and that it is people of color who are most affected by that violence. Pacifism assumes that white people who grow up in the suburbs with all their basic needs met can counsel oppressed people, many of whom are people of color, to suffer patiently under an inconceivably greater violence until such time as the great white father is swayed by the movement's demands or the pacifists achieve that legendary critical mass." End quote. This is from Peter Gelderloos from How Nonviolence Protects the State. Here's another quote from Twitter. It's from @nonsense. Quote, "Can the hungry go on a hunger strike? Nonviolence is a piece of theater. You need an audience. What can you do when you have no audience? People have the right to resist annihilation." And I'm sorry, this quote is from Arundhati Roy. It was posted by Nonsense, but it was from Arundhati Roy. Okay? And it was reading these quotes that woke me the hell up. And I realized you're so right. When you are the target of violence, you don't have the luxury of being nonviolent. And I think it's always important to pay attention to who is always demanding nonviolence from the people. It's never the bottom up. It's always the powers that be. It's always the ruling class. It's always the media who is run by the ruling class that's sitting here being like, nonviolence, choose nonviolence. We laud Martin Luther King because we, hold him up to be the emblematic of nonviolence while we simultaneously shit on Malcolm X, even though we know the truth about Martin Luther King Jr. and that he started to change his opinions on nonviolence as time went on, but I digress. Always pay attention. Just like, that saying, never take criticism from somebody who you wouldn't go to for advice. It's the same thing. Never take, always pay attention to, the point being, always pay attention to who the messenger is when you're listening to a message. It's always the people at the top who benefit the most from all of us quietly accepting their oppression and suppression and exploitation and abuse and use. From all of us, they benefit so much from that. And so, of course, they're going to preach nonviolence. They don't want us showing up French Revolution style with pitchforks at their front doors, or should I say front gates. They don't want that. So, of course, they're always going to push the nonviolent narrative while they simultaneously are outsourcing their incredibly violent lives. Because let's remember, there's no such thing as an ethical billionaire. Don't exist.